On the distant planet of Viridian, the skies once gleamed with brilliant hues, and the land was lush with vibrant forests and sparkling oceans. The Viridionians, a peaceful and intelligent race of bioengineered beings, had flourished for centuries, their technology advancing in ways unimaginable to most of the galaxy. Their world was a beacon of hope, a shining example of what a species could achieve when harmony between nature and technology was realized. But now, Viridian was dying. The planet's core was slowly destabilizing, and no one could stop it. For years, the Viridionian scientists had tried everything they could think of. They launched massive projects to stabilize the core, drilled into the deepest parts of their planet, and even tried to reach out to their allies. Yet, no solution had worked. The core's energy pulses grew stronger with each passing day, shaking the planet more violently. The once thriving world now trembled in fear of the inevitable. The Viridionians had long looked to the stars for help. Over the centuries, they had built alliances with other species, some of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. They had shared knowledge, technology, and resources, believing that unity and cooperation would ensure survival for all. But as the days grew darker, their allies did not answer the call. One by one, the messages they sent out went unanswered. The leaders of distant planets, the ruling factions of powerful empires, simply turned their backs on Viridian. It wasn't that they didn't care. It was that they had their own problems. The galaxy was vast, and resources were limited. The fate of one planet, no matter how advanced its people were, simply wasn't worth the cost of intervention. As the quakes shook their cities and the once peaceful oceans began to rise in violent waves, the Viridionians faced the harsh truth. No one would come to their aid. The great galactic powers had abandoned them, leaving them to perish alone in the cold void of space. But in the darkest moments, a faint glimmer of hope emerged. A small, simple signal was broadcast into the void. It was a final attempt, a desperate plea for help. The Viridionians, with all their advanced technology, had never expected much from the outside world. But this time, they had nothing left to lose. The message they sent was short but clear. We need help. Please, save us. This message traveled across the stars, fading into the vast emptiness. For days, it went unanswered, lost among the countless signals sent across the galaxy. But then, something unexpected happened. A reply came, not from any of the powerful galactic civilizations they had known, but from Earth. The United Earth Federation, a growing power in the galaxy, had long kept its distance from the political squabbles of the larger galactic community. Earth had seen its share of struggles, and its people had faced extinction many times in their past. But they had rebuilt themselves, and now they stood united as one force, one voice. They were not the biggest or the strongest, but they had something the others didn't: a deep sense of compassion and a belief that life was worth saving, no matter where it came from. Captain Mara Quinn, a seasoned leader in the Earth Defense Fleet, was the first to receive the signal. She had known of Viridian, of course, its beauty, its achievements, and its fall from grace. But she had never imagined that humanity would be the ones to answer the call. Her first instinct was to dismiss the message. After all, humanity had its own problems. The galaxy was a dangerous place, filled with powerful enemies and risks that could wipe out an entire fleet. But as she read the message again, she felt a surge of something deeper, something that echoed in her bones. The Viridionians were asking for help, not because they needed more technology or more weapons, but because they needed hope. They needed someone to stand with them when no one else would. In that moment, Captain Quinn knew what she had to do. Without hesitation, she ordered the fleet to begin preparations for a rescue mission. She didn't know if they could save Viridian. She didn't know if it was even possible to stop the planet from falling apart. But she knew this: humanity could not stand by while another civilization faced extinction. There was something about the Viridionians' message, something that reminded her of humanity's own history of survival against impossible odds. "Prepare the vanguard," she said to her crew. "We're going to save them." The journey would be long, the challenges unknown, but Captain Quinn had no doubt that humanity could do what no one else had done. They would not let Viridian fall without a fight. The United Earth Federation had long been a symbol of hope for humanity. Once divided by war and conflict, Earth had come together under a single banner. The stars were no longer distant points of light in the sky, but the next frontier. However, the idea of helping other civilizations, especially one as distant as Viridian, was a decision that would not be taken lightly. Captain Mara Quinn sat in the briefing room aboard the EES Vanguard, her eyes scanning the cold metal walls. The mission she had just accepted felt larger than anything she had faced before. The galaxy was filled with dangers. Alien species that viewed humanity with suspicion, political tensions between powerful factions, and resources stretched thin across the stars. Yet there was something in the Viridionian message that refused to let her turn away. It wasn't just a call for help. It was a reminder of humanity's own struggle for survival in the face of impossible odds. "Captain Quinn." A voice broke through her thoughts. It was Commander Lewis, her second in command. He was a tall man with sharp features and a reputation for being calm under pressure. "The Council is asking questions. They want to know why we're taking this risk." Captain Quinn looked at him, her expression serious. "They don't need to know everything. What they need to understand is that Viridian's fall is a loss for us all. If we let them perish, we send a message to the galaxy that we only care about our own survival. I won't be a part of that." Lewis nodded, his concern still evident. "I agree, Captain. But what if this is a trap? What if it's a trick to lure us into an ambush?" Captain Quinn's gaze hardened. She had considered the possibility. The galaxy was full of enemies, and Viridian's signal could be a ruse. But her instincts told her otherwise. The Viridionians weren't the type to deceive. They were peaceful beings who had built their civilization with the hopes of sharing their knowledge, not conquering others. "We'll be cautious," she said, "but we can't sit idly by. We've faced worse odds before, and we'll face them again. Our people have always risen to the occasion when called upon. Now it's time to show the galaxy that humanity can still make a difference." The next few days were filled with preparation. The EES Vanguard was one of the Federation's newest ships, equipped with the latest technology. Still, there was much to do before they could depart for Viridian. Engineers worked around the clock, making sure the ship was ready for a journey that could take weeks. The crew, a mix of seasoned veterans and eager volunteers, gathered in the ship's command center for their final briefing. Captain Quinn addressed them. "This mission is unlike anything we've ever done before. We're going to a planet in crisis, one where no one else has answered the call. The Viridionians are on the edge of extinction, and we may be the only ones who can help. This isn't about politics or resources. It's about doing the right thing." The crew members exchanged looks. Some were excited, others nervous, but all were determined. The opportunity to make a difference in the galaxy was something few ever got. But what made this mission even more compelling was the realization that they were carrying the hopes of an entire species on their shoulders. The Viridionians had no one else to turn to, and the Federation was their last hope. As they prepared to leave, a final transmission arrived from the Viridionians. It was short, but its message was clear. "We await you. Please hurry." Captain Quinn's heart tightened. She had promised them she would come, but she couldn't help but feel the weight of that promise. If they failed, the Viridionians would be lost forever. And if they succeeded, it could change the future of humanity's place in the galaxy. The crew boarded the EES Vanguard, and the ship's engines roared to life. As they moved away from Earth's orbit, the vastness of space stretched before them, endless and full of possibilities. The stars seemed to beckon, but Quinn knew that the road ahead would not be easy. The journey to Viridian was long, and there were still many unknowns. For the first few days, the crew worked in shifts, getting to know each other better and preparing for the challenges ahead. It was during this time that Quinn had a conversation with Lieutenant Elena Cortez, one of the youngest members of the crew. "Do you really think we can save them?" Elena asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty. Captain Quinn smiled, though her eyes remained focused on the stars ahead. "I think humanity has always had a way of surprising people. We may not always have the biggest ships or the most advanced weapons, but we have something others don't. We care, and that's what makes all the difference." Elena nodded, her fear easing a little. "I guess you're right." The journey through the stars continued. As they neared Viridian, the once distant planet now loomed large on the horizon. The crew braced themselves for what was to come, but the feeling of anticipation was palpable. They knew they were about to face challenges unlike any they had ever known, but they also knew that, whatever happened, they would not turn away. Humanity had answered the call, and they would see it through to the end. The journey to Viridian had already taken a week, and the crew of the EES Vanguard was growing restless. Captain Mara Quinn stood at the ship's command center, her eyes focused on the planet growing ever closer in the viewports. They were nearing Viridian, but there was still much to prepare. The unknown awaited them. Every crew member had a role to play, but no one truly knew what they would face once they arrived. Captain Quinn had read the reports: Viridian's planet-wide instability, the massive earthquakes, the rising oceans, but nothing had prepared her for the feeling of helplessness she felt as they approached. What if they were too late? What if the planet had already collapsed in on itself by the time they arrived? And what if their mission ended in failure? "Captain, we've received an urgent communication from the Viridionian Command," Commander Lewis said, breaking through her thoughts. He handed her a pad with the message on it. Quinn quickly scanned the message. The Viridionians were in a panic. The tremors had become more intense, the cracks in the planet's surface wider, and their cities were slowly being swallowed by the rising tides. The message was brief but clear: "We cannot wait much longer. We need you." Captain Quinn's grip tightened around the pad. They had no time to waste. She turned to the rest of her crew, gathered in the command room. "This is it. We're entering Viridian's orbit within the hour," she announced. "Get ready. It's going to be a race against time." The mood on board the EES Vanguard shifted instantly. Some of the crew had trained for missions like this, but none had ever faced something as urgent as this. They were about to enter an unstable planet's atmosphere, unsure of what they would find when they touched down. The engineering team was already at work, checking every system and making sure that the ship could handle the unpredictable turbulence of the Viridionian atmosphere. Lieutenant Elena Cortez, the ship's youngest engineer, worked with an intensity that matched her captain's. "We've never seen an atmosphere like this before," she said, wiping sweat from her brow. "I'll have to modify the ship's stabilizers to account for the unpredictable shifts in gravity caused by the planet's instability. It's not going to be easy, but we'll make it work." Quinn gave her an encouraging nod. "Do what you need to. We have no room for errors." Meanwhile, on the ship's lower decks, the medical team, led by Dr. Aria McCall, prepared for any injured Viridionians they might encounter. Though the planet was on the brink of collapse, the medical team remained hopeful that they could help those in need. Dr. McCall had seen many crises in her time, but this was different. The fate of an entire civilization hung in the balance. "We've trained for mass casualties, but I've never experienced something like this," Dr. McCall said as she double-checked her medical supplies. "Let's just hope we don't have to use everything we've packed." Back in the command room, Quinn took a deep breath and addressed her crew. "Everyone, this mission is bigger than any one of us. We're not just saving a planet. We're showing the galaxy what humanity stands for. We've been given a chance to make a difference, and we can't waste it." The crew nodded in agreement, their nerves shifting into a quiet determination. They knew what was at stake, and they knew the odds were stacked against them. But one thing was clear: they would not give up. As the ship entered Viridian's orbit, the first signs of the planet's instability became visible. The once beautiful surface of the planet was now marred with massive cracks. The oceans churned violently, and entire cities seemed to be disappearing beneath the waves. The image on the viewports was nothing like the peaceful world they had seen in the reports. This was a world on the edge of collapse. "We're close," Quinn said, her voice steady. "Prepare for landing. I don't need to remind anyone that we are walking into the unknown. Stay sharp." The crew worked together seamlessly, each person carrying out their duties with precision. As the Vanguard descended toward the surface, turbulence rocked the ship. The entire crew could feel the tension in the air, but they pressed on. "We're entering the atmosphere," Cortez called out from engineering. "Hold on tight." The ship shook as it passed through the thickening air, and the viewports flashed with the blinding light of the planet's surface. The turbulence grew stronger as the Vanguard descended further, but the ship held steady. Quinn's hands gripped the armrest of her chair. This was the most dangerous part of the mission. One wrong move, and they could lose everything. "Stabilizers engage," Cortez reported. "We're making our final descent." As the EES Vanguard touched down on Viridian's surface, the ground below them seemed to tremble. The crew quickly secured their gear and prepared to leave the ship. The moment they stepped outside, they would be in a world where everything was uncertain. The only thing they could be sure of was that they had no choice but to move forward. Captain Quinn took a final look around the command room, her crew ready for whatever came next. They had made it this far, but the real test was just beginning. The planet was crumbling, and time was running out. It was up to humanity to find a way to save Viridian. "Let's move," Quinn said, her voice resolute. "We're not backing down now." The EES Vanguard landed on the surface of Viridian with a soft thud. The air outside was thick and heavy, the once pleasant atmosphere now tainted by the instability of the planet. The ground beneath them trembled, sending faint vibrations through the ship. It was as though Viridian itself was struggling to hold on, its very heartbeat slowing with every passing moment. Captain Mura Quinn stood in the doorway of the ship, her boots heavy on the metal floor. She took a deep breath, readying herself for what awaited them outside. She knew the stakes were high. The Viridionians had entrusted humanity with their survival. There was no turning back now. "Ready to move, Captain," Commander Lewis said, his voice steady as he strapped on his gear. Quinn nodded and stepped out into the unknown. The team followed, their boots crunching against the uneven ground as they emerged into the chaotic landscape. The sky was a dull gray, and the distant horizon was filled with massive cracks in the earth. In the far distance, a city that had once been a symbol of Viridian's grandeur was now barely visible through the rising tides and shifting landscape. "We've got to find the Viridionian leaders," Quinn said, her voice calm despite the overwhelming situation. "They've been waiting for us." The team moved quickly, making their way toward the nearest city center, where the Viridionian command had established their temporary base. The streets, once lined with towering structures of gleaming metal and glass, were now cracked and unstable. The once beautiful gardens were now flooded, the once perfect architecture now crumbling under the weight of the planet's collapse. It was as if the entire city was holding its breath, waiting for something, or someone, to save it. As they neared the Viridionian base, they saw the first signs of life. Small groups of Viridionians were gathered, their faces drawn with exhaustion and fear. Their bodies were graceful and sleek, their skin a soft shade of violet, but their eyes told a different story. The Viridionians were no longer the proud, confident species they once were. The uncertainty of their situation had taken a toll on them. They looked up at the humans with a mixture of hope and doubt, unsure if the Federation's promise would be enough to save them. Captain Quinn approached the leader of the group, a tall Viridionian woman named Vela. Her features were sharp, and her eyes were tired but determined. She had seen the end of her world approaching, and now here was humanity, the one species that had answered the call. "You came," Vela said, her voice barely above a whisper. We thought you wouldn't come." Quinn placed a hand on her shoulder, her voice warm and reassuring. "We're here, and we'll do everything we can to help. But we need your help too." Vela nodded, her expression hardening. "The planet's core is failing. We don't have much time left. The power we have left is focused on keeping our cities safe, but we can't hold on forever. If we don't stabilize the core soon, Viridian will be lost." Quinn glanced back at her crew, who had begun setting up equipment and preparing to assist the Viridionians. "We've come to help, but we need to understand exactly what went wrong. What caused this?" Vela sighed, her eyes darkening as she looked at the distant horizon. "It wasn't a natural disaster," she explained. "It was the result of our own ambition. Centuries ago, we discovered a way to harness the planet's core energy to power our cities, our technology. But we didn't understand the full consequences of what we were doing. We pushed the planet too far, and now it's collapsing." Quinn's mind raced. "So the instability is tied to your energy harnessing. Is there any way to reverse it?" Vela nodded slowly. "There may be a way, but it requires a complex procedure to realign the core's energy flow. We've tried, but our machines aren't enough. We need outside help." Quinn looked at her team. They were experts in many fields, but this was something entirely new. The technology required to stabilize a planet's core was beyond anything humanity had encountered. But this was their mission. It was humanity's responsibility to help. She could feel the weight of the Viridionians' expectations, but she refused to back down. "Then we'll find a way," Quinn said firmly. "We'll work together. Humanity's greatest strength is our ability to adapt. We've faced impossible odds before, and we've always found a way." The Viridionians exchanged cautious glances, but there was a flicker of hope in their eyes. It wasn't much, but it was something. Quinn knew that hope was the first step. "Let's get to work," she said. "The sooner we start, the sooner we can save your planet." As the team worked alongside the Viridionians, Quinn felt a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in a long time. This wasn't just about technology or resources. It was about saving the species from extinction, about showing the galaxy that humanity was willing to put everything on the line for those in need. The storm on Viridian was growing, but for the first time since they had arrived, there was a sense that something could be done. The crew worked tirelessly, building on their combined knowledge and skills, knowing that the fate of an entire world rested on their shoulders. The clock was ticking, and the weight of the situation hung heavy on Captain Mara Quinn and her crew. Viridian's core was unstable, and the planet's collapse seemed inevitable. Yet, as the humans and Viridionians worked side by side, a small but growing sense of hope began to take root. They had no guarantees, but they weren't about to give up without trying everything they could. Captain Quinn stood beside the Viridionian leader, Vela, as they surveyed the construction site where the stabilization equipment was being set up. The project was massive, a complex system designed to redirect the planet's energy flow, built from a mixture of Viridionian technology and human ingenuity. It was a long shot, but it was their best chance. "How are the preparations coming?" Quinn asked, her voice steady, though she could feel the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her. Vela looked at the assembly crew, working diligently under the supervision of Lieutenant Elena Cortez. "We're making progress. The humans are faster than we anticipated, but we're running out of time." Quinn's gaze shifted to the horizon, where dark clouds loomed over the city. The tremors that had rocked the planet were growing more frequent, and the land seemed to be giving way beneath their feet. Time was indeed a luxury they couldn't afford. If they didn't act soon, everything would be lost. "I'll give them another hour," Quinn said. "That's all the time we have." The Viridionian city that had once been a symbol of progress and unity was now a crumbling reminder of the dangers of unchecked ambition. The once beautiful spires were now bent and broken, their reflective surfaces shattered by the relentless tremors. The floodwaters were creeping higher with each passing minute, threatening to engulf everything in their path. "Captain," came the voice of Commander Lewis, interrupting her thoughts. The equipment is almost ready. We've confirmed that it can withstand the core's energy output, but it's going to be risky. The system could overload, and if it does, we won't have time to escape. Quinn's mind raced. The danger was clear, but the alternative was unthinkable. They had no choice but to go forward. The Viridionians were counting on them, and she refused to let them down. "I understand the risks," she replied. "But if we don't do this, the planet is gone. We don't have a second chance." The crew had been working tirelessly for hours, pushing through exhaustion and fear, determined to complete the task. Cortez and her team had adapted their human technology to work in harmony with the Viridionian systems, but there was still much that was untested. The key to saving the planet lay in activating the energy redistribution system, but it was unclear whether it would stabilize the core or cause an even more catastrophic failure. As the final components were connected, the ground beneath them shook violently, sending waves of dust and debris into the air. The planet was fighting back. The energy from the core was like a wild animal, struggling against the restraints they had placed on it. "We have to hurry," Vela said, her voice urgent. "The core is reacting more violently than we expected." Quinn nodded. "Activate the system. Now." The crew scrambled to their positions. Cortez worked at the console, her fingers flying over the controls. The machine hummed to life, its lights flickering in time with the planet's tremors. The pressure was building, and every passing second felt like an eternity. Quinn could hear the faint crackling of the planet's core, the sound of a world on the brink of destruction. "Captain," came Cortez's strained voice, "I'm initiating the process, but we'll need to monitor the energy output closely. If it exceeds the safe threshold, we'll need to shut it down immediately." "Understood," Quinn replied. "Keep an eye on it." The massive machine at the heart of the operation began to glow, its energy flow synchronized with the core's unstable output. The air around them crackled with raw power as the system fought to balance the energies. It was a delicate dance, one that required perfect timing and precision. The ground beneath their feet began to rumble harder this time. The system was drawing the core's energy, and it was reacting unpredictably. Quinn could feel the tension rising in the air as the rumblings intensified. The skies above them darkened, and the city shuddered under the weight of the force being unleashed. "Just a little longer," Quinn muttered to herself, watching Cortez's every move. They were so close, but everything could fall apart in an instant. Then, without warning, the rumbling stopped. The silence that followed was deafening. Quinn looked up, her heart racing. The sky above them cleared slightly, and the tremors ceased. The ground was no longer shaking, and the floodwaters began to recede, slowly but surely. The system was working. The core was stabilizing. "We did it," Cortez said, her voice filled with disbelief. Vela stepped forward, her eyes wide with wonder. "You saved us." Captain Quinn allowed herself a rare moment of relief. They had succeeded, against all odds. Viridian's core was stable for now, but the planet's future would depend on the Viridionians taking responsibility for the mistakes of their past. Humanity had helped them survive, but it was up to them to ensure their world remained intact. "This is only the beginning," Quinn said, her voice firm. "We've bought you time, but the work doesn't stop here." Vela nodded. "We will not waste this chance." "Thank you, Captain." As the EES Vanguard prepared to leave the surface of Viridian, Captain Quinn looked out over the city that had been saved. The storm had passed, and the planet had survived. But for Quinn and her crew, this mission was a reminder of the power of hope, determination, and the will to make a difference. Humanity had stepped in when no one else had, and together they had saved an entire world. The stars shone brightly above Viridian as the EES Vanguard lifted off from the planet's surface, the once turbulent skies now calm. The crew of the Vanguard had completed their mission. Against all odds, they had stabilized the core of a dying planet and saved an entire civilization from certain destruction. But as they sailed away from the surface, The weight of what they had done settled in Captain Mara Quinn's mind. They had done the impossible, but it wasn't over yet. The Viridionians now had a chance to rebuild, to learn from their mistakes, but the road ahead would not be easy. The planet's wounds were deep, and it would take time and effort to heal. Quinn sat in the command center, her fingers resting lightly on the console as the view of Viridian shrank in the distance. The journey home was still a long one, but it felt different now. The victory was sweet, but the responsibility of their actions still weighed heavily on her shoulders. "Captain," Commander Lewis said, breaking her thoughts. He stood by the door, his expression thoughtful. "I've been reviewing the data from the planet's core stabilization. It seems like it's holding, but the Viridionians are going to need to be careful. The damage isn't completely undone." Quinn nodded. "I know. They have a chance now, but it's up to them to make sure history doesn't repeat itself. We gave them the tools they need, but they have to be the ones to rebuild responsibly." "Do you think they will?" Lewis asked. Quinn thought for a moment before answering. "I hope so. They've seen the consequences of their actions. That has to count for something." Back in the lower decks, Lieutenant Elena Cortez and her engineering team were finalizing the ship's systems, preparing for the long journey home. The crew had worked tirelessly on the mission, and their exhaustion was evident, but the pride of their success was enough to keep them going, and their bond as a team had only grown stronger in the face of adversity. Cortez wiped the sweat from her forehead as she finished running diagnostics on the ship's engines. "Everything's running smoothly, Captain. We're good to go." "Great work, Elena," Quinn said, offering a smile. "Everyone has given their all. This mission wouldn't have succeeded without each of you." Meanwhile, in the ship's medical bay, Dr. Aria McCall was sorting through her supplies, making sure everything was ready for any injuries that might come up on the journey back. Though there had been no major casualties on Viridian, the stress of the mission had taken its toll on everyone. A few bruises, cuts, and sprains were all they had to show for it, but Dr. McCall couldn't help but feel proud of the crew's resilience. "Everything's in order," she said to her assistant, who nodded in agreement. "They're a tough group. I think we'll be just fine." Back at the ship's command center, Quinn stood up and turned to Lewis. "Let's check in with the Viridionian leadership before we head back to Federation space. We need to make sure they understand that they have our support, but their work is just beginning." Lewis nodded, tapping a few buttons on his console to open a secure communication link. The screen flickered for a moment before Vela, the Viridionian leader, appeared on the display. "Captain Quinn," Vela said, her voice filled with gratitude. "We can't thank you enough for what you've done. You've saved our planet and given us the chance to rebuild." "It was a team effort," Quinn replied with a nod. "But the work doesn't stop here. You've been given a second chance, Vela. What happens next is up to you and your people." Vela's face was serious but determined. "We understand. We've learned the hard way that our technology, while powerful, can have destructive consequences. We will work with humanity to ensure that this never happens again." Quinn gave a small smile. "I believe in you. But remember, the future of Viridian depends on your ability to balance progress with responsibility. We'll be watching and will help when we can, but the hard work is yours now." "I won't forget," Vela said. "We'll rebuild, and we'll do it right this time." Quinn disconnected the communication, feeling a sense of pride. The Viridionians had accepted their role in this new chapter. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time, Quinn felt a glimmer of hope for their future. "Captain," Cortez called out from the engineering station, her voice bright with excitement. "We've received a message from Federation Command. They're sending reinforcements to help the Viridionians with their recovery efforts. It looks like the Federation is standing by their commitment to help." Quinn smiled, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. "Good. The Viridionians need all the support they can get. It's not just about fixing the planet. It's about rebuilding trust and relationships too." As the EES Vanguard continued its journey through space, Quinn found herself reflecting on the lessons learned. Humanity had faced incredible odds on Viridian and had emerged victorious. They had saved a planet, but more importantly, they had shown the galaxy what it meant to stand together in the face of adversity. The mission had changed them all. They had entered Viridian with the weight of the galaxy on their shoulders, but now, as they left, they knew they had made a real difference. The crew of the EES Vanguard had come together in the truest sense of the word, each of them contributing their skills, their courage, and their hearts to a cause bigger than themselves. To new beginnings, Quinn said softly, her eyes gazing out at the stars. "We're ready for whatever comes next," Commander Lewis replied. And as the EES Vanguard sailed further into the depths of space, the crew knew that they had made their mark on history. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: humanity was ready to face whatever challenges the universe had in store. The journey back to Federation space felt slower than ever. As the EES Vanguard sailed through the stars, Captain Mara Quinn couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed. Their mission on Viridian had not only saved the planet, but it had brought humanity into the fold of something much larger, a future where unity, cooperation, and hope could shape the galaxy. Though the Viridionian leaders were now working to rebuild their planet, Quinn knew the challenges they faced weren't over. The Viridionians had been given a second chance, but only time would tell if they would embrace the lessons they'd learned. The crew of the Vanguard had done their part, but it was now up to the Viridionians to prove they could build a better future. "Captain," Commander Lewis said, breaking her thoughts. He was standing beside her, staring out at the stars through the viewport. "Do you think they'll make it?" Quinn paused for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "I think they'll try. They've seen what can happen when power is used recklessly, and they have the support of humanity now. It won't be easy, but I believe they have what it takes to rebuild." Lewis nodded, his gaze shifting toward the distant stars. "It's incredible, isn't it? How one decision, one moment, can change everything. A whole planet saved. I'll never forget what we did there." "Neither will I," Quinn replied quietly. "But it's not just about what we did. It's about what the Viridionians will do next. That's what matters." Meanwhile, down in the lower decks, the rest of the crew was preparing for their return to Federation space. Lieutenant Alina Cortez and her engineering team were running final checks on the ship's systems, ensuring they would be ready for re-entry. The hum of the ship's engines was a comforting sound, a reminder that they had succeeded in their mission. Yet, even as they moved forward, there was an undeniable sense of reflection among the crew. Dr. Aria McCall, the ship's medic, stood by the medical bay, her eyes focused on a holographic display of Viridian. It was a planet she would always remember, not just for the danger it posed, but for the people she had met. The Viridionians had come so close to losing everything, but now they had hope. "Their journey is just beginning," Dr. McCall said to her assistant as she worked. "We've done what we can, but now it's up to them to find their own path." Up on the command deck, Quinn turned toward her crew, her voice strong and determined. "We've been through a lot. We came together, we saved Viridian, and we made a difference. This is what humanity does best. We face challenges head-on, and we find a way to overcome them." The crew nodded in agreement, a sense of pride filling the room. They had accomplished something monumental, but there was still more work to be done. They weren't just returning to Federation space as heroes, they were returning as ambassadors of hope. As the Vanguard approached Federation space, the ship's communication systems beeped with incoming messages. The Federation had been watching closely, waiting for updates on the mission's success. Captain Quinn activated the console and received a message from Admiral Caldwell. "Captain Quinn." The Admiral's voice came through clearly. "We've been following your progress, and I wanted to personally congratulate you and your crew on the successful stabilization of Viridian's core. Your efforts have shown the galaxy what humanity is capable of. I trust you'll be returning soon, but know this: your work has just begun." Quinn smiled, feeling the weight of the words. "Thank you, Admiral. We've done our part, but now it's time to focus on the future. The Viridionians have been given a second chance, and we'll continue to support them as they rebuild." The Admiral's voice softened. "Your mission was a reminder of something important, Captain. That sometimes the greatest strength lies in unity. The Federation is proud of what you've done, and we look forward to working with the Viridionians in the future." As the message ended, Quinn sat back in her chair, a feeling of contentment washing over her. Humanity had proved its worth on Viridian, and now the galaxy had a new understanding of what they could accomplish, not through sheer force, but through cooperation and understanding. "We've done something incredible," Lewis said quietly, his voice filled with respect. "But it's only the beginning." Quinn looked out at the stars once more. "You're right, Lewis. This is just the beginning. We've shown the galaxy that humanity can make a difference, and together, we'll continue to do so." The stars ahead twinkled like a beacon of hope, and the crew of the EES Vanguard knew that the legacy they were leaving behind would be one of unity, courage, and hope. They had faced the impossible and triumphed, and as they returned to Federation space, they knew they had done more than save a planet. They had forged a future where cooperation was the key to a brighter tomorrow. "To the future," Quinn said, raising a glass, "and to the legacy we've created together." The crew joined her in a quiet toast, knowing that they had made history, and that history was just beginning.